Devtraco Group in Ghana has appointed a new CEO, John Entsuah, who of course was leading business development and was the head of strategy. He's got new responsibilities now as far as the real estate outlook for Ghana and wider Africa is concerned. He joins us now from Accra. Good morning to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. So congratulations on the new role. What changes from head of strategy and business development to a CEO for you?
Well, thank you for having me. And again, good morning. Well, that's an interesting question. Well, the transition from head of strategy and business development to CEO hasn't been that easy. And obviously, there are certain requirements that are needed of the role, particularly in the way we think about the business. Obviously, some of the differences in my current role as CEO is balancing strategy and execution, where I need to simultaneously develop a vision for the brand and for the future and deliver results in the present. I'm constantly diagnosing the strengths and weaknesses of the business as you will expect of a CEO, and also prioritizing some of the most critical issues that come to the business on a daily basis, and also resource allocation, which obviously becomes very, very important in the role as a CEO.
Now, speaking of the business, right, the group is a real estate firm. You've got 6 subsidiaries, and I wanted you to help us out as far as, how much they contribute to the bottom line. So you've got Devtraco Limited there, Devtraco Plus, the Talis Property Service, Fabrico, Pan-African Homes. That one sounds pretty obvious. And then, of course, Devtraco Hospitality Holdings. That sounds obvious as well. So what about the others? Who's the cash cow of these 6?
Well, as a CEO, obviously, I expect all of them to perform equally well. But at our core, we are a real estate development company based in Accra, as you've mentioned. I sit at the group level as a CEO with our co-founder and executive director, Joseph Edu, and other executives, and we manage the affairs of the 6 subsidiaries. What makes us unique is that we are a one-stop shop for investors across all stages of the value chain. We have our in-house design, development, construction, and post-sales, what I call the facility and property management capabilities. So when we talk about the subsidiaries, Devtraco Plus Limited is the development company that focuses on the high-end segment of the market. In collaboration and partnership with Devtraco Limited, where we have formed an SPV under the name of Devtraco Woodlands Limited that focuses on development in the mid to high income segment, as well as the affordable housing segment of the market. Then we have Devtraco Builders Limited, which also goes by the name of Fabrico. That is our construction company. So we construct our own development. Then we have Talis Limited. Talis is our property and facility management company that takes our development that we have sold to investors and then also be able to manage and also do renting and letting for our investors, where they do not have to necessarily be intimately involved in that operation. And then over the last couple of years, we've diversified into the hospitality segment, where we are building a hotel under the Pelican Hotel Limited and also the Landmark Limited. So these are businesses under the Devtraco Group that I manage on a daily basis.
All right, thanks for that breakdown. So, I mean, you did mention affordable housing. Inflation in Ghana now, as at I think June, 42%, I think, if not 47. It's been growing from April. So, okay, 42.5 from 42.2 in May. So with you serving primarily middle class and upper middle class clients, can you provide affordable housing when inflation is this high?
Well, Adding inflation to the equation sort of makes it a little bit difficult, right? Because affordable housing in an environment of high inflation is very complex. But there are some possible strategies as developers that we consider. One is we look at partnership with government agencies, and also the chiefs of custodial lands to access the land. We also look at partnerships with financial institutions to access capital and financing for some of our mortgage-based investors. As you're aware, one of the major barriers for affordable housing development in Ghana and in any African country for that matter is a high cost of land acquisition and also accessibility to financing. What we've done is we've positioned ourselves and we've collaborated with public agencies and financial institutions that makes land acquisition a little bit worry-free and also at a relatively lower cost. We've also leveraged the demand for housing units by allowing higher density development, as we've done successfully in one of our developments in Community 25 in Tema. And that in itself has been a landmark. We're also looking at other opportunities in developing more affordable housing. One that we are embarking upon and to launch in September is our Woodlands projects in the Pampram Ningo area, which is on the right at the outskirts of Accra. So these are opportunities that we see in the affordable housing segment, but however, it does require the participation of the government as well as our financial institutions to collaborate and make affordable housing reachable and accessible to the ordinary Ghanaian. Now, I mean, what we are looking at is that owning a home in Ghana doesn't necessarily have to be a nightmare, and it should still and continues to be a dream for many people.
Now, what's the appeal of the real estate sector in Ghana? Because I think for the most recent GDP data, it contributed year on year about 5.1%, quarter on quarter about 0.9%. So can you speak towards the appeal of the real estate sector in Ghana for investors?
Well, so the real estate segment is still vibrant. And again, notwithstanding some of the issues that we've had prior to the COVID pandemic, Ghana, with its economy, obviously sort of bolted very well over a decade. But with COVID, obviously, things took a turn. Right about now, I think the government of Ghana, rightfully so, has taken some remedies with respect to working with the IMF in making certain arrangements to be fiscally responsible. That has in itself boosted investor confidence, and we're beginning to see investors coming back to take an active role into the real estate market. So we see that as a little bit of a blip, but we see light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that for investors looking at Ghana in the real estate segment pose, I think, a significant opportunity relative to other markets.
All right, I want to ask you about the exchange rates, the CD dollar, exchange with what's been going on. How does that factor in with your business? I mean, I'm guessing some of these building materials might need to be imported. Can you explain how the exchange rates plays in here?
Well, so the exchange rate is a little bit of complicated, and obviously as a developer where most of our transactions are dollar-based, doesn't necessarily affect us much. But when you look at the sort of fundamentals, if you are a local buyer and you earn in cedis, the cedi depreciation does obviously hurt you. But on the upside, if you are in the diaspora earning in dollars and you buy in a property in Ghana, obviously that's an advantage to you. But when you look at our operations where most of the materials that goes into our development are imported, when you have currency fluctuation, that in itself suppresses your margin. So, there are sort of mechanisms that we employ to make sure that we are hedged and not necessarily exposed to the cedi depreciation. Overall, we look at our costs. And then we also look at transactions that we participate in where we sort of protect ourselves in the contracts that we issue out that we're not necessarily exposed.
All right. Now, speaking of exchange rates, I want to move over to Nigeria. S&P Global upgrading Nigeria's outlook to stable from negative. Does that give you any reason to look closer at real estate in Nigeria? What's your take on the real estate sector in Nigeria?
Well, I think the S&P Global upgrade of Nigeria's outlook to stable from negative is a positive sign for the real estate sector in Nigeria. The upgrade reflects the government's recent reforms that could benefit the country in its growth and its fiscal responsibility. Now, the way we look at Nigeria, it's a little bit different, not necessarily as a market participant, but the way we looked at Nigeria is mainly to provide diversification and options to the Nigerian investor with our developments in Ghana. And I think with time and with the right partnerships, we may consider a strategic play in Nigeria in the real estate development market. But for now, we're looking at Nigerian investors for Ghanaian products.
What about other African nations? Who has, outside of Ghana, where you're mostly focused on, who would you say has the most, I guess, real estate appeal?
Well, obviously, Africa as a whole, has appeal across board, depending on what country that you decide to participate in as an investor. But what we look at on sort of the continent, there are some markets that are of interest to us. Of course, there are many other factors that we consider that influences the attractiveness of each market. Some of the things we look at are the legal and regulatory framework of the country, the currency exchange rate, the cultural diversity, the repatriation of funds, which is very important. And what we do is we do an extensive due diligence. Now, to mention a few, obviously, we're looking at Mauritius. Mauritius has a very vibrant and attractive real estate market. And for that matter, there is significant support from the government that promotes foreign ownership and foreign investment. We take a look at Kenya. Kenya's market is also very vibrant and it's been recovering from the impact of pandemic, just as many nations do at the moment. And also, the market also benefits from government policies and incentives to support the real estate sector. So that it's a positive. Botswana, we're also taking a look at Botswana. That is also showing signs of improvement thanks to some of the economic recoveries that have been put in place. And also there's an increased demand for affordable homes in Botswana. So those are some of the markets that we look at right about now as to how we take a position in those markets. Obviously, the key thing here is having the right local partners in place. And that, obviously does tremendous good for foreign investor coming in. So those are some of the things that we look at.
Great stuff. Okay, my final question, I want to go back to Ghana real quick. Outside Accra, are there any other regions that you're playing in that look attractive for investors outside of the commercial capital of Accra in Ghana?
Well, so let me sort of make a plug here right now in terms of, listen, Ghana is a beautiful country to visit. So for some of your listeners and your viewers, I encourage people to come to Accra and the other cities in Ghana. I think it's a great opportunity. So aside from Accra, to your question, we have Kumasi. Kumasi is the second largest city in Ghana and the capital of the Ashanti region, right? It's a major commercial and cultural center with a population of about 2.5 million inhabitants. It has a high demand for housing, especially in the middle to high income segment. So Kumasi is a very, very great market for real estate. We're looking at Tema. Tema, for some of your viewers, is the coastal city in the Greater Accra region. It's about 25 kilometers east of Accra. It has the largest seaport in Ghana and a major industrial hub with a population of about 400,000 people. Tema has a very high demand for low-income housing just because it's on the outskirts of Accra and the land prices are a little bit cheaper for that. So those are the sort of plays that a developer can sort of look at in terms of positioning themselves in the affordable market segment. And then when we talk about the central region, we're looking at Cape Coast and Takoradi, and those are vibrant cities that are about 150 to about 200 kilometers outside of Accra and have very interesting things going on, and also a good location for real estate play.
Hey, great plug for the economy of Ghana and real estate segment. Mr. John Entsuah, CEO of Devtraco Group, thank you so much for joining us to talk about real estate across Africa and the opportunities, and congrats again on your new position as CEO.